when I saw that you folks sent over a pitch, it hit me deeply because I'm the parent of two Gen Zs.
I have
So
three Gen
it's
Zs.
okay. So you can appreciate it as well. So we can have a
Three.
good conversation
Yes.
about what's going on.
Yes, I have three of those. All mine are girls.
Yeah.
But they teach me new things. Like they just introduced me to Tiny Desks. I don't know if you've seen Tiny Desk on NPR. Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Jack, if you tell your girl, you may have a
I
girl.
have a daughter and a son. Yeah.
Okay, if you tell your kids, I watched Taylor's Tiny Desk concert this morning,
Mhm.
and I was telling my 24-year-old just a few minutes ago, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, mom, that's my favorite. Have you seen Dua Lipa?" And I was like, "I have actually." Maybe not the biggest fan, no offense, but I'm like, Taylor Swift I could take. So
Yeah.
they teach me new things all the time.
I love
Well,
that.
that's how it works. I think it's cool. It's like you learn from both sides, where you bring, what you know to them and they bring back forth, especially when they get to a certain age. You could do that now because they have a lot of different things that they know about that we don't.
It's the old reverse mentoring, Jack, that we
Yes.
grew up with. I mean, they're reverse mentoring. I said in my year-end message, they teach me these new terms. Like think
Yeah.
about, we'll talk about this more formally, but it's funny. Anything new acronym, like, when IRL came out or
Yeah.
2BH, TLDR, I still don't get completely. So that I have to be re-educated on that on a regular basis. But they have like a different language. And maybe we all did, maybe our generation did as
Yeah.
well, but I don't know. I mean, so my newest one is don't sleep on something, like don't sleep on
Don't sleep on it, right? Don't sleep on
that's
it.
like one of my favorites. Don't sleep on that.
And some of them, it just doesn't make sense. It's like a hot minute
Yeah,
means like a while, not like
yeah,
right away. So some things you
exactly.
have to really think it through.
Yeah, no, but again, TLDR is my favorite because
Yeah.
too long didn't read or don't read. But they say it at the end of this long paragraph, and I'm like, why didn't you put it at the top and then just
Yeah.
it's too long? Why don't you make it shorter? Like I don't.
Exactly.
It's illogical. So anyway, where are your kids? How old are they, and what do they do?
They're 23 and 25,
Okay.
and they're still trying to find their way.
Yeah,
They're just, it's really hard. And
yeah,
maybe we could kind of get, launch into it. Maybe if you
yeah,
want to like just jump into it now and use this
yeah.
as I'll be
Sure.
very frank. I mean, they're wonderful kids, very smart, work really hard, and they went to good colleges, good universities. But what happens is that it's just brutal. It's really intense. It's ridiculous to get, in the door. I mean, is it possible for Gen Zs? Yes.
Yeah.
If maybe you're a software engineer, software developer, or, you just caught the right breaks. But I'm finding out, this cohort is just having a really tough time finding a job, keeping a job, you know, and trying to make some money. So maybe if one day they could get an apartment, perhaps. Or,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. As I mentioned, I have three. So mine are 24, 22, and 20. My
Mm,
oldest is in medical school. My middle has her first job.
mhm,
Very exciting. For me, and my youngest is a sophomore in university. And
mhm,
I think the difference is they're kind of a generation caught between, well, we know their parents are young boomers
mhm,
or Gen X. Like that's the parents. And think about they have this grounding of the millennials, they're grounded like the millennials. They have the
mhm.
dreaming of a boomer, which I think combines to make them feel like they need all the answers, but not necessarily want all the answers. They live in this in between. And so when you say it's
Mhm.
tough, yeah, the hiring landscape's tough. Like we know that companies are intending to hire about 5% fewer college graduates next year.
Mhm.
But you think 5% is not that huge of materiality. And yet you said something important. Finding a job is tough, and then keeping it, or I would say wanting to keep it, is also tough. We just did some great research at ManpowerGroup that said almost 50% intend to leave their job in the next 6 months. So there's intend on their own part. That's their
Mhm.
intention. And yet they're most confident about leaving, but least confident about finding something that will meet their needs because they're very individualistic. And so I think it's some of this is the landscape, and some of this is inside themselves in terms of I need to have the path clear. I want to have the path clear. Oh, I kind of like the path unclear, and I want to discover a new path. And they live in this in between.
So
The
when you say
upside down, like Stranger Things.
so when you're saying that, is it that they try to keep doing different things, or they get bored easily? Or is it maybe it's they feel there's unrealistic expectations from their bosses, and due to that, they're like, heck, I don't want to keep doing this. I'll just try to find another job.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say in our research, we haven't heard unrealistic expectations. What we've
Mhm,
heard is that they value life and the way they define
mhm,
life. And so a lot of people say balance equals remote. It's not this generation. Balance equals I want time to have a full life outside of the office. I value experiences. I don't value like versus the millennials who value this certainty and security of
mm,
employment. They really value their life outside the office, and it doesn't mean they're not hard workers. That's a misconception. They're hard workers, but work has a place in their life versus their life is work. And they're probably the first generation. The millennials started moving in that direction, but the millennials are more insecure, so they need this security. They're the first generation to say, I can see how other people live because they're Generation Z,
mhm,
Zoomers. They're the first digital native internet generation we have. And so they actually have more optionality at their disposal in terms of what they can see than any generation we've ever seen before. And so in other words, I might want to go be a programmer. I may want to go do something else, or a teacher, and I don't see the barriers between going back and
mhm.
forth. But truly what they're doing is saying, I want to curate a life and I can do that. And I have unlimited options, which then leads to them being overwhelmed, which is another thing that we've seen. This generation is very overwhelmed. 42% say they have feelings of being overwhelmed versus
Mhm.
about 36% on average. And so this optionality is not always a great thing.
Now, why do you think they feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, so we know that they feel these feelings of
Mm,
being disconnected, and that a lot of that comes, we didn't talk about this yet, but they are the pandemic
mm,
generation. I mean, my middle daughter didn't have a high school graduation, didn't get to go to college her freshman year, so they
mm.
miss these formatives, and so they
Yeah.
a little bit of the world's out to get me underpinning all of their experiences. And so it's a little bit of that. How much more can we take? They're also individualistic, Jack, which is quite strange because they don't believe in labels.
Mhm.
So don't group us or together. We don't like identifiers. We're individuals. And yet they have this huge need for belonging. And so when you say, why are they feeling overwhelmed? They
Right.
sit in this intersection of, I've missed critical life experiences. I know that people tell me that all the time, by the way. So I'm speaking I'm clearly not a Gen Z, but as a Gen Z, I've missed these opportunities, these formative life experiences. I'm feeling incredible workplace stress. So they're more likely to feel workplace stress. That's part of what's overwhelming them. And you say, why? Because they feel disconnected from the workplace. And so 51% of Gen Z want to come into the office on their
Mhm.
terms. So it doesn't mean every day. The only other generation who wants to come in at that rate, baby boomers, because baby boomers were raised with separation between work and life. Well, Gen Z is a whole different reason. When you ask them, why do you want to come into the office? It's how they learn to work. So back to your question of why do they feel this disempowerment? They don't know how to work. They want to learn. And yet when I go to the office, maybe my manager isn't there, my manager's manager. So how do I learn to work? How do I learn what to wear to work? But the number one reason is it's where I find my friends and my dates. So
Mhm.
it is the social network. And when that is not as readily available for a generation, it's yet another formative experience that they're missing. And so it's a challenge generation in terms of how they're going to learn to engage, and what they expect of their employers.
All right. Now tell me if this makes sense, or I'm just trying to make it feel better. But I have a sense that I'm a Gen Xer, and I imagine you're probably a Gen Xer as well.
I am.
I think we have a certain type of mindset because the boomers were above us. They were the bigger brothers and whatever who were annoying, and they thought they knew everything. And similarly, I think with the Gen Zs, they feel like we were kind of overlooked. No one really paid attention to
Yeah.
us, which in a
Yeah.
way is a good way. So you learned how to do things on your own. You had to be tough. And I think the same way, we were the latchkey kids.
Yep.
Both parents worked. You'd come home and you had to do everything. We help do the laundry, do your homework, do it on your own. And I think with the Gen Zs now, it's kind of sort of similar. They got pulled like my son Jake, and Emma had to get out of college. We drove him back home. Then, when you can come back. So you're losing all that time. And then you have, with the 2 years or so of the pandemic, now you had more people into the job market where they would have went in and got it. Now you're competing against 2 years. So I think it toughens them up. And, I don't like the fact that they have to do that, but I wonder if in the long run, that can maybe serve them well because they get very thick skin. They're used to getting like knocked around. They get used to being beaten up around, so after a while, you just feel like, all right, you know what? I'm going to have to figure out how to do it. And I'm have a lot of faith in this, not just because I'm subjective because they're my kids, but I think generally this cohort, they do seem to feel like, all right, you know what? F it. I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna make something.
Or what's
happen.
next?
Yeah.
What's next? Like they kind of have a
Yeah.
chip on their shoulder around what's
Yeah.
So I do agree with you that the resilience will help them because,
Mhm.
we know that the future of work is and has changed. The current work has changed and the future work going to change more. Skills are the new currency. We're going to see those change constantly. People are going to change what they do at work. I'd say change jobs, but they're going to change what they do wherever they work on a regular basis. And that resiliency and ability to take on the world, whatever it throws at you, will serve this generation well. I think for us as employers, we have to face up very differently to Gen Z. Like I said, they're individualistic, so they want you to see them. That like your listeners and viewers who are Gen Z, they will hate that I'm calling them Gen Z because that means there's commonality amongst this group and they are individualistic and it's an unequal one sample size. And so they really want to be seen that way. And so we as employers need to engage that way. And because now, and you probably know this stat, and it's Q2 of this year, I believe, in the US, that Gen Z now has overtaken baby boomers in terms of percent of workforce. Now, millennials are still the largest, and now Gen Z is second, which is the first time, baby boomers haven't been in that position and since the millennials took the first position. So it's quite big news, but it is a different generation. They expect you to see their whole selves. And so this concept of even though they're disempowered, they're very likely, much more likely to talk about mental stress, to expect employee assistance in terms of help me have a more balanced life. You don't get to just talk about work with Gen Z. They want you to see what they're doing, know my cat, know what I did this weekend, like all that needs to come into play. Cats are on the come up, by the way, another Gen Z term, on the come up. The cats are on the come up. I don't, poor dogs, as pet owners, the Gen Zers are moving towards cats randomly enough. But I think that resilience will serve them. But also, again, we have to face up in a way that sees the whole person, that engages in skill building and upskilling, and that charts a career path because we know that they think about leaving. Like there's this whole mentality of, I'm going to change my job in 6 months. Maybe not even because I'm not happy, but because there's got to be something else out there for me. And we have to help them see a path that gives them growth and diversity of experiences. Or we're going to end up with a generation who does have pieces of experience, but aren't ready for the management that we will need as the boomers retire.
Do you also feel, do you think with AI in the works that's another thing that people have to worry about, particularly young people? Because when you hire entry-level folks, there's the expectation, okay, we're training them, they're learning the ropes. Now, if you have AI, is this another roadblock where hiring managers might say, do we really hire, Jack or Jane or Joe, whoever? Maybe instead of hiring 10 of them, maybe 3 of them, because now they'll use AI. Are you seeing that where you are or seeing that in the data?
Yeah. So two thoughts on AI. One, we would expect it, and not just us, there are a lot of companies who've gone on the record, like the McKinseys of the world in this space. We would expect it to be net job creators, new kinds of jobs, changing skills, deconstructing jobs into tasks. And so no question, it's going to disrupt the workforce, but it's going to create new opportunities. So I don't see the risk that you're stating in terms of it's going to take a job. But let me tell you what is a very valid question is, what is entry level? You use the word entry level. What is that in the future? So if AI is deconstructing jobs, how do we teach young people to become managers when they don't have those entry level experiences? Because some of those tasks have been automated, and that is, I think, a really defining challenge over the next 10 years. Is how do we onboard into companies as tasks become automated to get the core experiences humans need to lead other humans, and do it obviously in partnership with AI. But I don't, there's a lot of skepticism on AI from the general workforce. What is the impact going to be? What does it mean for my job? But all of the data continues to show that AI alongside human capabilities is where breakthrough happens. And back to your resilience. So I think this resilience, this knowledge of technology that they have, Jack, that you and I don't have. Like, technology has always been a partner in their life, always. And so it's not the same way that a boomer, or Gen X may see the risk or the threat. It's more of, okay, what can I do with this now?
And that's where I think it goes back to what you're saying about a reverse mentorship type of thing, which I got, I'm trying to find out a way to do and build something like that, because I do feel it helps on both sides, because I see with my kids and their friends, you ask them to do anything with technology and it's crazy. They're just so easily like, okay, boop, 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 do this, where I'm like, I have no idea. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm getting all angry and grumpy. It's not working.
Yeah.
But they just it just because I guess they're born with an iPad in their hands right away. So like they're so used to it. Whereas they could teach a lot to other generations who are like not terribly comfortable with it.
Well, one of my favorite terms that my girls, again, I have all girls, my girls will say, is that's knowable. Because all you have to do is ask ChatGPT or ask Siri. That's knowable. And that can refer to anything. Anything you can ask, they will say that's knowable. And so this idea of, I can know everything. I can know everything. Do I want to know everything is a different conversation, but I can know everything. And the part that we haven't touched on is they are a little bit of a retro generation too. So if you think about what are the big shows that are popular with Gen Zs, Grey's Anatomy, that they watch reruns of Grey's Anatomy, which is crazy to me, or whatever the new term for reruns is, because that dates me. But whatever that's called, they watch it again and again. They've gone back to 80s and 90s.
Why is that, do you think?
I'm telling you, it's this grounding. I said they're very pragmatic. So they have this mental grounding of millennials. Like, I have to take care. I can't, spin crazily like my baby boomer parents. So this grounding of millennials, but they have this dreaming of the baby boomers. And that shows up in how they engage at work. It shows up in how they engage at home. It shows up in what their interests are. And of course, again, they're also watching things like Tiny Desk, which is a funny modern way to see music. And so they live in this in between.
Do you think it's also like, you have comfort food? So when you think about these like retro shows that maybe, when you're watching, these shows from the 80s or early 90s, it just makes them comfortable in a different time?
I don't know. I don't know if I think it's comfortable. I think it's grounding. And so maybe it's the same thing. Maybe grounding and comforting are the same things, but they are quite pragmatic as a generation. And I think it shows up in their behaviors. They're grounded, which is good. That's good for our future. And they're also a bit accountable. So you said it as a dad, my kids are stressed, like they're trying to make their way. It's hard. Like that. And we as parents, of course, it's like we want to help and we want to intervene, but they can do it. This generation can do it because they have that chip on their shoulder that we talked about. But I also think they're carving their own way forward, and reject the idea, Jack, that you and I grew up with, which was you better know what at 18, you better know what you want to do because you've got to get a degree in it. And that's what you're going to come out and do for the rest of your life. They reject that idea and are like, I don't know what I'm doing at 18. I may not know what I'm doing at 23, but I'm going to figure this out. And they are. And that's good. With the changing world of work, that's actually good because we get set on, I grew up as a finance person, therefore I'm a finance person. They're going to be like, so I got a degree in finance and I want to go do marketing. How about that? And they have no reason to believe they can't, given what they've overcome.
Yeah. How do you see within, let's say, your organization, from the Gen Zs to the boomers to the millennials, the Gen Xs, do you see conflict that goes on where, in the hallways or in the offices, you have just like, you don't understand what I'm trying to say, or you don't know what you're talking about, or just go do your job, leave me alone. Like, do you hear that either anecdotally from where you are or just from friends and other companies?
Yeah. So what we hear from, the heads of people organizations or the heads of HR is it's the first time we've had this many generations in the workforce.
Yeah.
So that is new. Now, how that shows up is in things like incentive plans. So you and I grew up at a time where, hey, there's a 3-year payout for incentive plan. Maybe there's a 5-year payout. Okay, they're planning to leave in 6 months. So what are you going to do to incent somebody for 6 months? So it really challenges the entire way incentive structures are built. So I'd say that I don't feel the conflict. We don't see the conflict between the generations, but we do see the questioning on a lot of the systems and structures that are in place of corporate America on retention. Remember the millennials were the kings and queens of the micro raises. Like they wanted raises every 3 to 6 months. That was the big hallmark of the millennials. They want to be rewarded on a regular basis. Some would say they needed to be rewarded on a regular basis, but that's controversial. They wanted to be. And Gen Z is like, I'm going to take matters in my own hands back to how you opened. And so we don't really see the conflict intergenerationally, but we do see the push on the corporate structure, diversity. It's the most diverse, Gen Z is the most diverse, racially and ethnically diverse cohort in America right now. And so diversity, they grew up digitally, they grew up diverse. And so they want companies that stand for something and stand against something. And this idea in corporate America of, I'm going to talk about this and not talk about that. No way. Gen Zs, you're either going to say it or they're going to find it. And so there is no hiding in terms of what you stand for and stand against. They're going to expect you to say it. If you don't, they're going to find it out because everything is knowable. And so it really is this impact. So they're disempowered in some ways, and they're empowered with the access to knowledge, and really uninhibited about what they can learn. And so I think they bring that into the workforce, which is good across the generations. So they push the baby boomers on, this is what we have to do in this sequence. Obviously, I'm generalizing on purpose. They push on that. They push the creativity and of the millennial group or cohort that's really focused on, we need to have security, keep my head down. I'm in child rearing age. And so I think it's actually a really interesting time in American employment history to see all these cohorts with different skills and experiences literally working together to power the country. And so I'd say the opposite. I think we're seeing the strength. And back to your technology piece, come on, if you and I are in a crowd and we want to take a picture, somebody take a picture of us, we all turn around and find a Gen Z somewhere and say, they're not asking you or I, Jack, they're asking somebody else to take that picture. And I do the exact same thing. And they have all these angles they do. Like they're gifted.
All right. Can I go on a little tangent for a second?
Please.
When you mentioned millennials, what happened to them? Like overnight, it seems they don't talk about it. Turn back the clock a little bit. All millennial, everything, avocado toast, whatever, like every little thing they did, you hear about it. Then, because I was just thinking about or talking to somebody maybe a week and wait, we were inundated with millennial stuff, and now they just pull the rug out. Yeah. So in the office, are they not as relevant now, or is like the Gen Zs are going to be the new shiny, superstars coming up? And the millennials are now like getting, they're getting a little older, and is there something going on or no? It's just,
Yeah, I would say millennials are the older brother or sister to the baby of the family,
Mhm.
which is Gen Z. And so it's not,
Yeah,
of course, millennials make up the bulk of the workforce today.
yeah.
They're incredibly relevant. I
Mhm,
got an internal giggle when you said in the office, because they're the generation that does not want to come in the office, like men
mhm,
and women. It is not about your role in the family. They want to be home. They're in child rearing age, so they're the least interested in coming back to the office on a very structured way. Again, I think balance is self-defined, but in terms of structure, they're the least interested.
mhm.
And so I think they fly under the radar, Jack. They're quiet. I don't know if they understand how big they are, but as a collective, because if they did, they'd probably be a little noisier. But they're not about making waves. They're not about standing out. They're about fitting in. And Gen Z is taking up that space
Mhm.
terms of the conversation, and they're the rowdy little sister or brother in the hallways that is chatting.
And tell me if this makes sense, because to me, empathetically, I feel when there's so many you've probably seen there's so many articles. Gen Zs don't work hard,
Mm.
they don't care. They just quit like this, like so easily, and they just have no heart. Like I don't know, because to me, that's not what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Again, I could be completely biased, but that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that, hey, they were brought up in a time, high inflation, high interest rates. It's going to be very hard for them to get, an apartment even. And let's say in New York, where how can they get an apartment? It's just unaffordable. So they're in a tough spot. It's a squeeze.
Yeah. No, and in fact, I'd say it's quite the contrary from the
Mhm,
data. They're very value centric. And
mhm.
yes, this is where I think the pinpoint is, Jack. They're value centric, but their value aperture is much broader. And so they do care about the environment. They do care about
Yes.
diversity. They do care about what companies stand for. And so what you didn't hear me say is they don't just, because they do care, but they don't just care about themselves.
Mhm.
And so they're really an outward facing generation in terms of, the things that they are interested in, which puts pressure on workplaces, by the way, because how do you solve all those challenges for them? But it's different. They're the first kind of outwardly facing generation that we've had in that regard. And so I don't think it is, at least we haven't seen, it's not a work ethic. That was much more talked about from the millennials, by the way. It's not a work ethic
Mhm.
situation. It is definitely that their aperture is much broader and they care about more things than just themselves. And maybe that means they show up differently in the workplace in terms of things they're interested in and want to talk about. But work ethic is not something that we have seen. Now, commitment is different. So if you
Mhm.
would have led with, they have commitment issues. We are starting to see some of that, and that shows up in the data with their intention to change jobs. And if they don't get what they need or want from an employer, they will leave. And that is new.
Now, what do you think about this theory? Because I kicked this around to see if this is reasonable. That given what you were just saying, what happens is that do they look at their parents and their parents' friends who were laid off, lost their jobs, maybe went through the financial crisis, never really got back on their feet again, what I mean? Going through all these things, and then if you're a kid and you're seeing that happen, and you're seeing maybe your mom or dad lost their job, or your uncle lost their job, or person down the block, like you don't, you could be young, not even a Gen Z, even when they were younger, be like, that doesn't seem too cool. So, like, why am I going to kill myself when I'm watching, like, my dad drive to work from New Jersey to New York in traffic, takes 3 hours round trip, comes home cranky and grumpy. And then they're thinking, that does not seem good at all. I don't want that. That seems terrible. So
Yeah.
I wonder
So
if part of it is that
yeah.
not that they're trying to shirk the work or get away from it. They're just looking, and I'm sure my kids looked at me like, what was wrong with him? He was nuts. Why were you going back and forth? That's inhuman.
Yeah, so
So
there's a bit that is, so remember, we're talking about people born between 97 and 2012,
mm,
1997 and 2012
mm,
to age you and I. So in the first financial crisis, they were quite young. They have lived in a time of political instability,
yes,
geopolitical
that's the other
instability,
thing.
so that does impact them. You know, the description you gave of seeing their parents is a bit more of a millennial description than a Gen Z description. But the Gen Zs are like, life is short and unpredictable. I got to live it now. Like that's their philosophy. Live it now does not mean lazy. It
That's
doesn't.
not a bad philosophy, live because you're living in the moment,
Live it
right?
now. But they
That's a
have
really good
to,
thing.
because everything they've been through and everything they see still happening in the world around them, you know, it's that they're growing up in war times. I mean, in war times and the rise of populism. I mean, it's a very different experience than any
And
generation.
drones attacking
Yeah.
orbs in the sky.
Outside my expertise, but yeah, I think and you know, they're growing up in a time, Jack, and so remember this intersection of digital natives, and they're needing to have relationships, you know, where they find friends and relationships on apps with math,
Yes.
science that fuels their choices. And now this is the new hot take. It's like a whole social, like, I don't know about your kids, but for my kids, it's the whole social experience now. Like they will go to parties, like little mini get-togethers, and like flash up, you know, Apple cast their matches, and they do collective decision making on, you know, swiping. And it's
Interesting.
fun. Oh yeah. Jack, you go ask your daughter. Your son probably isn't going to give you that insight, but you go ask your daughter, and it's a whole social movement. But again, what does that tell you? They depend on technology. They depend on math behind it. They aren't skeptical of the algorithm that supports it. And they're seeking connections. And so they're even willing. And for, you know, when I grew up, never would I sit here and say, here are 10 people, let's choose one. But they're transparent that way. They're living their lives out loud. They're uninhibited by that, and they're doing, you know, crowdsourcing of how they're making these decisions, which again is true in their personal life. It's also true in their professional life. And that, you know, with your kids choosing their careers, my guess is they're having a lot of conversations with their friends on, what do you do? What do you like? How do you get time off to go take the trips and experiences that you want to take?
So now do your ladies fall into this meme where they're saying, I want someone 6'5", blonde hair, blue eyes, trust fund? Are you familiar with that kind of meme?
The 6 by 6 by 6, I think is what it's called. Yes, Jack, I am. I have 3 daughters, Jack. I'm familiar with that. But I try to raise my girls to say, you be that, you know, you be who you're called to be, and you'll attract the right person.
So it's what I've seen now. This, I don't have the data to prove it. Maybe this is something for the next Manpower, survey. I noticed that the young men, they're like kind of withdrawing. They're on Discord. They, instead of going out to a bar or to wherever, they're on Discord with their friends, just chatting along. They're playing video games, and they're cool with it. And they're not really as social as other generations. I don't know if that's in the data you have, or you've seen that from your daughters and what they say.
No, we haven't seen that data, but I will tell you, we do quite a bit in the IT space, and we have seen, you know, this idea of gaming for men and, you know, young men and young women really take off in terms of where they spend their time. Technology is friend. Technology is enabling friendships. Definitely seeing that, and some of that does skew more male than female in terms of where they're spending their time. And we know from data that the average age to marry is later, delaying or just choosing not to. We also know that the birth rate in America every single year continues to hit a 100-year low. And so we know that, you know, people choosing to have multiple children is on the decline. That's not just an American phenomenon, by the way. But yes, we are seeing satisfaction come from different places in terms of where they're spending their time.
Right. So to be positive, what could we do in our capacities as parents, as people involved in the workplace and all that, to help, you know, this group to really flourish, and even though they started out with tough times, that it could get better. Any thoughts, any ideas?
Yeah, so and it's going to sound, it is true. You asked me the question the right way, to parent and to, you know, to manage. I would say engage, teaching, question. And what I mean by that, engage, like show that you care. They're looking, they're seeking for someone at work that cares for them. And so show that you care, embrace this individualism, ask them about their life. COVID gave us that opportunity
Mhm.
to unmask our homes, if you will. I didn't mean to use unmask with COVID. That was unintentionally funny, but as I heard myself say it, that's funny. But it gave us a chance to really get into people's homes and see their full lives and do that. Like lean into that conversation as employers and managers. On Teach, they want to know what their future career path can be. They want to know that they can grow and develop and leverage their skills and use their skills in the right way. So we need to meet them where they are, understanding they didn't have all the same experiences socially in college or finishing high school that other generations may have had. We may have to lean in different ways in terms of helping them understand how they can fit into the workplace and what their potential can be. And then question, we make assumptions, but go back to my opening, which is they're individualistic. So we can't aggregate all Gen Z together. We need to question and really seek to understand what's important and what's meaningful to them, and then seek to deliver that where we can. And also be, to your point about resilience, they're quite resilient. Be candid where we can't. And that kind of authenticity, that kind of raw engagement will be rewarded and I think encouraging. And when we do that, what we found is they're incredibly, again, values driven. Loyalty is one of those when they feel like it's reciprocated. And that is what I think changes this dynamic of their intention to leave.
It's very hopeful because I think they're going to use this energy to really do well. It's just the time, it takes the time, and in between it's going to be a little frustrating for everybody. But I think overall they're going to do wonderful.
They're
So
growing up, Jack.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
growing up in front of our eyes in some cases, and we
yeah.
don't get these fully formed humans when they start work, and they're probably a little less formed than the humans that came before them. But it doesn't mean they're less capable. And to your point, I think they're quite resilient. So, and by 2030, they're going to be the majority of the workforce. And so we got a few years to figure this stuff out with them.
Before we wrap up, let me ask you, if with respect to Manpower, what are you seeing in the marketplace? Is it more white collar jobs, blue collar? Because I'm seeing and hearing that a lot of people now for the first time are saying maybe to their kids, maybe you should look into the skilled trades.
Yeah.
So what do
Yeah.
you see within your organization? What are the hot, it's always interesting, like what's the hot areas, what's the cold areas? What should people look for? Which should say, don't go in that area. This is cool. And I know it's always a generalization because everyone likes something different. But
Yeah.
overall, what do you
Well,
think?
we can see real-time demand.
Okay.
It's gifts that we have in the economy is we can see real-time demand for jobs and labor. And what music to my ears to hear us talking about skilled trades. I mean, let's remember that the biggest driver to GDP is consumer sentiment, and then the biggest industry sector is manufacturing. And so in America, we need to make sure we're encouraging people towards skilled trades, and the blue collar jobs are not the blue collar jobs of the Industrial Revolution. There are things like IT jobs that happen to show up on an assembly line. So I think that's super important that we think about the skilled trades. But to answer your question, manufacturing has actually held up a bit better in this economic slowdown than any other industry or any other time of the past. IT traditionally holds up quite well, whether it's a programmer or computer engineer, it usually holds up quite well. It's been softer in terms of who's hiring right now than we would have expected, than I would have predicted, but that is true. So we're seeing a little bit of weakness there. Now I'm hopeful as we, regardless of the politics.
No, is it just because it's getting into the holiday season that it's soft, or?
No, it's not new. This isn't new.
Okay.
It's been for the last 18 months that we've seen IT slow down. So think about the pandemic. What happened in the pandemic? Hospitality and leisure cratered, IT took off because people were working from home, et cetera. Then hospitality and leisure started coming back because Americans had been in their house and wanted to have experiences. Then we saw IT start to decline. And I'm just talking about demand of jobs in terms of where the jobs are. And so now what I would encourage your kids and my kids to bet on is bet on skills, on things that you can actually contribute. Soft skills are very important: communication, collaboration, those things cross industries. In terms of hot pockets, if you want to go into a specific industry, manufacturing's been quite resilient. I would not sleep on IT, to go back to that terminology. IT is going to come back. There's investment on the sidelines, but it's a bit slow right now. Sales and sales professionals, that has been fairly robust through the crisis. Why? because everybody wants to be ready post economic recovery with big, sales and big pipelines. That's been a good spot. And I guess a little surprising to me, marketing, which is something a lot of our young people are facing today. Marketing has been fairly steady, not robust, but fairly steady during the crisis, which again, why is that? Because we have limited innovation dollars. People aren't launching new products, if you will. And so we have to put our money behind something we already have available. And so that would be another spot. And then medical, it'd be remiss of me. The #1 job in demand in our country was during the pandemic and is still today registered nurses. So the whole territory around nursing and healthcare for an aging population, that is hot today. It is going to continue to be hot over the horizon.
That's great to hear. This is it just, if I could go back to sales, because sales has like this ick feel to it for a lot of people, right? Like, oh, I don't want to go to sales. Now, I consider myself, I guess, sales because I've run a search firm for, 2 decades. So you are kind of selling. You're selling to get a job order. You're selling to get the person there. Is there like a barrier sometimes where you have this, all right, it's sales. I don't want to go into sales. My parents are going to think, oh, I'm going into sales. Isn't that great? Do you kind of think that they should just go for it? Because people in sales who are good, they make a lot of money, right? They do really
Well, I mean,
well.
so to bring it back to
Yeah.
specific topic around Gen Z,
Yeah.
I would highly encourage Gen Z to go into sales, because think about the things we've talked about. Their resilience, they can take no. They're individualistic, so they
Yeah.
have enough confidence that I can take this on. And they have the capability to say, I'm going to pick up and move on. Maybe not jobs in this case, but if you say no to me, I'm just going to go to the next frontier. And so I definitely think sales is one, I can tell you it's a job in demand. 2, it gives you such critical soft skills, negotiation, navigating. For young people, think about my 23-year-old daughter trying to sell something to you, Jack. Like, that's quite intimidating, and
Yeah.
it gives you that ability to position yourself and to show up and to build your personal brand as a young person. And so I think I started my career in sales, if that doesn't show so clearly, in my excitement over the question. But I'm so grateful that I developed communication skills early on. I learned how to, position what I was trying to say in a different way, a lot by process of failure, and then figuring it out and trying again. But I really believe sales is an amazing place to jumpstart your career. We see it still skew more male than female. And so for all your female listeners, I would so encourage you to try it. And it fits in this entrepreneurialism that we haven't talked about that also shows up in Gen Z. It fits well in entrepreneurialism. You can kind of, set your own course. And if you're a good salesperson, you decide when you engage and how you engage with work, which is one of the things that generation wants. And if you're not, you learn and develop a lot of new skills that you can take into something else. So.
Well, this is great. I love it. Now, yeah, I'm more optimistic now. I'm really pumped up.
Well, you should be. I mean, we have to
Yeah.
be, right? I mean, they're going to be the majority of the workforce. We have to be optimistic and look forward. And I think the combination of pragmatism and individualistic and entrepreneurialism and resilience, if you put that in a recipe, I think it equals success.
Well, this is great. I love it. Anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share? I know we went over a lot. Anything that maybe I missed out?
No, I think we covered it. I didn't think I was going to
This
talk
is
about
good.
my dating apps. My kids are going to have conniptions over that, but it's okay. My
This
job is
good.
to embarrass them, Jack. So don't worry.
Okay, you can embarrass them this way. I wrote a piece the other week or so, and they had about expectations about Gen Zs for their compensation, and I kid you
I
not,
saw that. I saw your piece.
it was like
Yeah.
$600,000.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it was a joke. I didn't know if they were just messing around with whoever has the survey,
Yeah.
or are there some people who just feel like I should make 600? I don't know. What
For
do you think
them
of that?
and for their partner,
Right.
back to the 600,000, 6 figures and 6
Right.
feet tall.
I guess so, right?
that-
The 600. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what they're looking for. And but that also shows, Jack, did we as parents miss something
Yeah.
in teaching them the responsibility
Right.
of management of dollars and of how to balance a budget? Like my middle daughter that just got her first job, I was so proud of her because she said, I'm gonna she lives in Washington DC, and she goes, I'm gonna pick my own place. And I said, I felt bad because I'm a mom. I'm like, oh, I'll help you with the 1 bedroom and I'll give you the money at one time so you can just you can budget it because that's an important skill. And she said, no, Mom, I'm going to take the studio. When I grew up, they were called efficiencies, by the way, but it's okay. They can call them studios. I'm going to take the studio and I'm going to pay for it myself. And lo and behold, that 22-year-old girl is doing that by herself. And she doesn't have a car because she can't afford the parking.
Mhm. Good for
So
her. Awesome.
that should give us
That's
hope.
awesome.
Because
Perfect. This is a good way to end it. This is great.
it's
And
a
a
good way
very
to end.
positive thing. So this is awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My
This is
pleasure.
awesome.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure
My
to
pleasure.
spend
And
some
you know
time.
what? I love in the future to come back, we talk about like more like what's hot, what's that, because that's what people really want to hear.
Yeah.
What jobs are hot,
Yeah.
what's not hot, what are they going to waste their time on, what they should go to. So
I do it
that's what
every
they're really
month.
hungry
I
for.
do it literally every single
Okay.
month, Jack. We come out with what are we seeing in real time.
Yeah.
The jobs numbers are a look in the rearview mirror. So they're
Mhm.
actually what was hot last month. I
Yeah.
can tell you like today, like registered
That's
nurses
good.
today. We didn't talk about truck drivers. Truck drivers are in the top 3 in the country in terms of jobs and demand.
See, and they don't talk about stuff like that. See,
No,
this
and
is
it's we
right.
have to. During the pandemic, we did. Remember, it was the
Yeah.
first time we talked about signing
Yeah.
bonuses for truck drivers.
Yeah.
Like it's this idea of skilled trades and trades in general.
Mhm.
The challenge is not usually the student. The challenge is usually the parent and the school counselors, and
Mm.
that is what's blocking us from skilled trades. But we're placing welders that are making 6 figures, again, back to 6 figures, and that's an opportunity for it also gives them this discovery of I can go be an offshore welder, I can travel as a welder. I mean, it's this intersection of life, work, and life, that I think some of the trades can give people.
Well, this is fantastic. Well, I love this. This is a very uplifting conversation. And I think for the people who watch it and their parents who watch it and listen to it,
Yeah.
they're going to feel good about everything. So thank you so much. This
My
is
best
awesome.
to your two, Jesse.
Thanks, Sue. Thank you.
Have a good day.